Hodgson.
Mr Speaker, so just to reaffirm, Labor will support this legislation going to a select committee, and can I reiterate the comments of my colleague, the Honourable Leanne Dalzell, in respect of the government's approach to this legislation, and say to the Minister for Justice that his conduct and his approach to this process, I think, has been good. We'd like to thank him. We hope it will continue, and I think that the Minister ought to be commended for the way that he's approached this. My personal view of this legislation is that it's good enough. In fact, I'd go a little further and say it's really rather good. It's less than perfect for reasons that I'll come to in a minute, but it is rather good legislation, and given that it has to be legislation that's supported, I hope, by every party in the House, then getting to a state of it being rather good at the point of introduction is probably as good as one could hope for. So that's great. The next thing I want to just say for the record is that I'll be voting for MMP, and I think MMP should win in the first of the referenda. Not only that, I think it is clear to me that MMP will win. That's my judgment. Of course, I could be wrong. And I think that it will win for the reasons that it won last time, which is that it has allowed for a much more diverse parliament than we've had since the advent of MMP. We've had a Rastafarian and a transsexual and any number of people who describe themselves as various forms of gay. I'm sitting to my left is the first Samoan woman, I think, in the New Zealand Parliament. To my right is a part Tahitian, and so on. And so it is around the chamber. We have now a much more diverse and reflective parliament. We've even got a veterinarian. Now, needless to say, a number of these people were elected from electorates, not because of the list. But nonetheless, the advent of MMP has allowed that diversity to arise to an extent greater than it would. I look across at Sir Roger Douglas, and I would hazard the guess that Sir Roger Douglas would not have been able to make it back into this parliament had there been first past the post in place. I dare say he would agree. But the point is that that sort of diversity has been occasioned by the advent of MMP. The second thing is that although we have had instances of tails wagging dogs, including arguably earlier this week, it has not been a dominant feature of our parliament. This is not the Israeli Knesset. There are some things which have been difficult to settle because of MMP. I don't think our approach to macroeconomic policy has gone well under MMP. I don't think our approach to climate change has been brilliant under MMP, and one or two other examples. But for the most part, this government continues, the government of the day continues to be able to run the ship and to run the ship more or less, and nearly always as a minority government. Nearly always. Whereas before MMP, there was an assumption that there'd be a coalition majority. A tradition seems to be a minority government, and we've rewritten a little bit the constitutionality of the Westminster system. We started it 4.5 years ago. The present government continued it 1.5 years ago. The timing is long, but I think that's tolerable. The reasons for the timing are, first of all, we have this because the National Party made an election pledge and wants to keep to it. That's understood. The second is that should MMP win in the first ballot, then we do have to have an opportunity to do some tweaking before the election in 2014. And in the event that MMP didn't win the ballot, of course, there would need to be a big build-up and a great hoo-ha-ha, not unlike 1992-93 period. That means that some people are already thinking ahead because they're presuming an MMP victory to the importance of Part 4. And I'd simply make a couple of comments about Part 4. The first is a confession. I was on the select committee that drew up MMP in the first instance, and it was me that moved that the threshold be 5%. For better, for worse, it got voted in, I think unanimously. I can't remember. But we went back and forth, 4 or 5. We went back and forth over 100 versus 120 versus 140 because the Royal Commission had suggested 140, and it was me that suggested 120. We were just trying to get some momentum going. Whether 4 is right or 5 is right is still moot. It always was, it always will be. It's just a figure. It's not German. It was occasioned. Oh, it doesn't matter why it was occasioned. It's a long ago history. The point is that there's one thing that's missing. I'm not particularly worried that it's missing, but I'm not sure whether the minister's aware of the fact that in the 92-3 period, the 93-4-5 period, we had a big debate about lists, whether they should be open or closed, and whether they should be regional or national. In other words, there was a 2x2 box. We don't have a 2x2 box in this law. We've got a 2x1 box. I don't mind that, but I'm letting the minister know. I personally think that a national closed list is the way to go for all sorts of reasons, but the public may have a different view, and they certainly would be wanting to hear from them should it come to that. I do want to take the minister on about his comments on advertising and just say to him, I agree with him. This is the most transparent referendum we have ever had. The rules around transparency in this law, so long as it passes in this form, will be better than has ever been the case before. But there was a little bit of sophistry in the minister's argument, and I feel the need to just fillet him out a little bit on that. And that is to say that something happened in the 2005 election which should never have happened, and I hope never happens again, and which arguably changes the construct of the way that we approach electoral law. And it's an important question, because speaker after speaker have said that electoral law really matters, that it's very central, and I'll go a little further and say it's one of the cornerstones, perhaps the cornerstone, of our unwritten constitution. But if we're going to settle for transparency in this referendum and not for transparency plus expenditure caps, whatever those caps are, then we may run into that problem again somehow, sometime, even with an organisation that doesn't meet the support of anyone in this House. You just really don't know what extraneous force might come on an electoral process. Now, if an electoral process is to be free and fair, and if we're to go for a plebiscite which is as universal and as untainted as possible, then it seems to me inevitable that we're going to have to reconsider the role of expenditure caps, whatever they may be. It's simply too vulnerable to leave it untouched. And I just say that to the minister. He may or may not agree with me, I'm not sure, but that in any case concludes my remarks.